back. WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. If it looks like I'm standing, it's because I am. I have a new desk. It goes up, it goes down. It's not moi, although it's MOI, our friends at Maryland Office Interiors, fixing me up, getting me standing. I feel like Clem Florio, like I'm punching and having a good time. I got my Fadley's gear rocking here. We had some crab cakes at Fadley's, kicked off the tour with John Sarbanes, our congressman, and then we went over to State Fair, had some fun over there last week, sort of setting the template for what we're going to be doing, celebrating communities. Mayor Brandon Scott's going to be joining us on June 11th. Dutch Rupersberger is going to be joining us on June 18th over Pizza John's as we begin the Crab Cake Tour. No Crab Cake Tour will be complete, Don Moeller, without inviting Baltimorean by choice, not by birth. So not really a Baltimorean, although I don't know if you come here, would we have a special name for them? I'm not sure. Ron Cassie joins us from Baltimore Magazine.
If you write a book called "If You Love Baltimore, We'll Love You Back," maybe that
qualifies.
Hey, I was walking around Hamden the other day. I was at the Royal Farms at the corner. There was an art thing up the corner. We went to Ekman. I'm walking around Hamden, and all I could think about was like the joys of Hamden as presented by Ron Cassie. You know.
Absolutely. Well, you know, we actually, Nestor, we were going to have Ron on to talk about this whole cleaning up City Hall. It's fascinating in the May issue of Baltimore Magazine. I know before Nestor going to make fun of my stickies.
Do you mean the plumbing or the interior, or do you mean the people in it?
I think he's actually talking about the people in it.
Okay.
We're going to get into that. Some fascinating stories, things that I did not know. And again, as always, if you're not getting Baltimore Magazine, do so. I always say subscribe. Don't pay the extra money in the grocery store. Go ahead, it's cheaper. Get a subscription. But in the meantime, while we're getting ready to have Ron on for that, he comes out and the June issue just hit the stands. And it's
is that my station wagon? Let me see that.
Look at that. You probably had one of those.
I had a Caprice Classic wagon. I had a Brady Bunch Roadster. I had a family Roadster. Absolutely.
Ron takes a tour around the state, America in miniature. We've heard it so many times. Absolutely outstanding summer article to talk about all the things to do in the state. Ron, before we get to this serious stuff of corruption and anything, how long did it take you to tour or go around and search out all these places? Because there's cool stuff in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's been, many years in the works, right? A story like that, from all the trips to Eastern Shore. Southern Maryland, which I think like St. Mary's is just it's a little bit of a drive, man, but it's worth it. And I love, I'm somebody who loves the mountains as well. So, and
well, here I go, man. Like, let's go. We're not going to wind up talking. I have to book you back for City Hall because I'm Ron.
I knew you were going to like this.
I'm being honest with you now. I love Ron. So this is the best part of having Ron on. We could talk about the Mets, or we could talk about City Hall, or we could talk about where to get a crab cake west of Cumberland. So I put together a map. This is honest to God. And didn't do this for you because I'm working better on paper these days because, like, you remember this. You went to school. You're a Jersey kid, but you went to school. You remember the old blue pencils with the colors in it? So I'm working like 5 colors now, like just, and this is everywhere purple is a place I haven't been. So you can see from the map, I have never been. Let's start at the bottom, okay? Smith Island, Blackwater Refuge, Oxford. Okay, just keep going. Tillman Island, go across the water. St. Mary's, Calvert Cliffs. Hang on now. Below Annapolis. I circled Annapolis because I've never really explored Annapolis the way I should. Now we go out to Antietam is circled out there where my friend has Big Cork Vineyard. We're going to throw an event there. I have Rocky Gap. I have Cumberland and Frostburg. I never got thrown out of Frostburg like a lot of my Dundalk buddies did after freshman year. And then I have out there the Savage River. See the little water snuggle up here? That's the Savage River for glamping, and then Deep Creek Lake in Oakland. I've never been to any of those places, Ron.
Wow. I'm not from Maryland, Nestor, but I think I might be more Maryland than
Well, what's he going to find out there, Ron? What's he going to find?
I love this issue. American Miniature, is a kind of we have a retro kind of theme to it, right? Because it was the great slogan for the state for so long, right? Really was the state slogan, like in the very late 30s into the 40s and 50s and 60s, when the highways are being built and the station wagons. And, in Maryland, we can be at, Ocean City or Assateague or Southern Maryland, or we can be basically, in the mountains in Appalachia in the same day. Either one is,
or we could be in Washington, hanging out in a room with people from all over the world, or in New York. And like, we got good stuff here, man. Like,
Yeah, we do. We broke that story down into components, and 5 components: the Eastern Shore, Southern Maryland, and Greater Washington was one of them. Because we forget, like, there's amazing stuff to do all in those PG, Montgomery County suburbs, Howard County suburbs, the Frederick area. There's some big things that we hit, like Patapsco State Park and things like that, and Assateague that people would be familiar with. But really, a lot of the American miniature too is kind of those little like Atlas Obscura places. The little like Annie Oakley's house on the Eastern Shore. That people maybe aren't aware of, the little kind of quirky features in each little destination that you can pass by, like maybe you have a dad who's or somebody's a baseball fan and you want to go see that minor league ballpark or something like that.
Well, I'll tell you what, the one thing, and I'll bring this back into politics, because you and I will go through the crab cake tour and me ziplining somewhere. I got Dan Rogers talking fly fishing with his boy Nick. We're going to glamp out on the Savage River, and Eric Sauer from Heroes going. So I'm putting together the Marlin Open begins in Ocean City when I'm there that week. So there's all these things that are actually happening. But I would think behind this, and if I'm really going to be honest and sit and have crab cakes with people, we just had Senator Chris Van Hollen on, and we're talking about, well, Maryland's a blue state. Well, is it a red state? Well, is it a purple state? And you mentioned America in miniature. I'm going to find some little Trumpology somewhere over in the Eastern Shore and up in the mountains. I know I do every time I drive out to the suburbs. We're going to find out we're not, as purple in the middle as we probably are red and blue. And we're trying to figure out how to make it more like the image here, more like where we can all get along and figure this out. But I'm going to go out to Western Maryland and see what begat killing the red line that became a circle in the middle of Cumberland or whatever, right? Like, and find out what issues people are fighting about throughout the state, I think politically as well this summer.
Well, I that's part of the fun of travel, right? Is meeting people with different points of view from different cultures, different food. Absolutely. I mean, and everywhere is a mix, right? Like, in Easton on the Eastern Shore, the Academy Art Museum there is one of the best small museums in the country. I mean, they get, because of some money and some proximity to DC and Baltimore, they get national caliber shows. And at the same time, you can go into Old Salties on Hooper's Island, for your oysters. And they might have an Orioles game on.
I'm writing all this down now. I'm looking for the best recommendations of Ron Cassie right now if I'm going on the road here. Where should I be sitting having a crab cake and a beer, discussing politics, sports, the environment, the weather, corn, chickens, whatever we're going to discuss?
Yeah, I mean, there's like the oldest continuous in operation ferries in the Eastern Shore, the Oxford Bellevue Ferry. You can take your bicycle on it. There's just some things are new, like the Harriet Tubman National Historical Park.
Isn't that an amazing place? It's amazing.
Don has told me I can't not go there. Like that. That's in red ink. That's on the list.
And Nestor, you're a pretty fit guy. I mean, the Baltimore Annapolis bike trail. It leaves from the I think it's called the Dixon. I forget the name of the place where you can watch the airplanes come in at BWI.
The park, the little park that, yeah.
Little park, right? You see, there's a park. There's always kids and families there. People pop open their minivan or something like that and watch the planes come in that park. You can ride your bike from there. It's like 13 miles to Annapolis downtown and back, or make it a shorter trip. Leave from Severna Park or something. The C&D Canal. That goes along the Upper Peninsula in the Bay. It connects from Chesapeake City in Maryland to Delaware City, which Delaware City, okay, it's in Delaware, but
I'm not going.
But,
somebody sent me a link. Moeller sent me a link. Stay in West Virginia when you're out in Western Maryland. I'm like, that's not why I'm going to Western Maryland to go to West Virginia.
Yeah, but that's West Virginia, as Don was probably pointing out. You can't really tell when you leave Maryland to Delaware.
Right.
Sure, it's all one peninsula. Western Maryland, the same thing. The highest point in the state of Maryland, and it's in our American Miniature magazine story, is the highest point there is not super high. It's Maryland.
It's right on the border. I looked it up. My wife asked me.
You can park your car. It's about a half-mile hike up. But as you go there, you will go from Maryland to West Virginia to Maryland to get there. And there's the smallest. We didn't put it in because it's technically in West Virginia. But the smallest church and the smallest post office in the country are located on that road through Garrett County to the highest point.
I looked it up. It's right below Oakland. It's got a name. It's called Hoy Crest. HOYE-CREST. It's got a rock formation. Guys, I'm gonna pull it up because I looked this up the other day because my wife has really gotten into. There it is, Maryland's highest point. Right, you can see the picture, and you can see how weirdly placed it is at the top of the Appalachian like forest or something like that. So we actually Googled it and we looked it up because my wife's been like up in New Hampshire the last 3 weeks with these things like going up rocks and all this. I'm like, I'm just getting a crab cake somewhere near Wisp or like some, you know what I mean? Like, let's not get crazy here with all of this. I mean, I'm going to go crabbing and crab picking and fishing, but like, there's so many things to see, right? And I guess this is the point of Baltimore Magazine this month, Ron. And the point of what I'm doing in August is, if this is the year you don't make it to Hawaii or Tahiti or Paris or whatever, not a bad summer to jump in the car and go figure out what happened in Antietam or figure out what's going on, what a Smith Island cake really is. And that's what I'm doing this summer. I'm taking a little after 52 years in a pandemic to admit to you, like I'm embarrassed, right? You're right. I mean that I've never done this. It's my time,
well,
right?
Nestor, let me ask you
this wisdom.
Let me ask you this, Nestor, because Ron writes about it extensively in the article. And again, we're with Ron Cassie, senior editor of Baltimore Magazine. Terrific June edition of the magazine. Baltimore, America in Miniature, families everywhere. Grab this, make this your summer Bible. But Ryan, you talk about Patapsco State Park. Now, those of us over on the west side, we love us some Patapsco State Park.
Yeah,
Nestor, you're a local guy. Have you ever walked?
I don't know that my wife has ever been to. I think my wife went to Patapsco State Park with a friend a couple years ago, maybe.
You've never walked across the swinging bridge.
No, I mean I've stopped the car at the top of 40 and like saw the sign where the little hotel is, and I'm like,
you gotta get there, walk across the
freaking baseball games. You chide me for not watching enough baseball. That's all I did. I had Gene Parker on this week, by the way, Ron. We did an hour on Merriweather memories and cicadas. It was fantastic. I've told everyone the beer at Merriweather's my thing, but like I'm calling Roderick's about fly fishing at the Savage River, and you're giving me a hard. I'm trying to open my mind here a little bit.
Well, get you and Jen. Tell them, Ron.
I'm not the only one that hasn't done any of these things that Cassie wrote about this month, right, Ron?
Get over there.
There's an interesting. I think we have a little misperception. I think in Baltimore City because there's so much to do in the city. A lot of us are kind of like urban people, but Patapsco, and the first time we did an outdoors magazine at Baltimore Magazine, there was a little bit of pushback, and I was like, do you realize like Patapsco has to close every weekend because it's too crowded. They can't let anybody else in the park. The parking lots are full, too crowded. And this is with many state parks. So Patapsco is a jewel. Like you can walk there. Like this is the other thing I would say to everybody in Baltimore, everybody in Maryland. There is nothing in our list. There's almost nothing in our state that's beyond anybody's ability to walk. The highest point in the state is a walk, right? In fact, if you go to
my wife was trying to take me across snakes and waterfalls in Hawaii, and I'm like, find the waterfall near the road. Okay, I've done this before, you know? I mean, that's a tenderfoot, and that was the same thing with Yellowstone. Find a place without the bears. And I had the kid from West Baltimore on that had the bison chasing after him 2 weeks ago in Yellowstone. I'm like, so I want to see a bear. I just want it to be like a place where it can't eat me.
That's Maryland. That's why Maryland's really, great for all that because it's really all family. Everybody can do it. There's no really difficult hikes. The tallest climb and the waterfalls are all very accessible, Cunningham Falls and everything. And Patapsco, though, at the same time, is really beautiful, really stunning. Two of the best mountain bikers in this country has ever produced, Chris Etal and Jeremy Bishop, are Maryland guys who did it at Patapsco. It's really a jewel, and
where do you put in there? Like, where do you go? Send me today I'm taking my wife. It's a beautiful day. Let's go for a walk. Where are we going? Tell me what to do.
Where I want to go, and it's the lead of our story, actually, is the story about Hancock, Maryland, which is only less than 2 miles. You can walk straight from Pennsylvania straight from West Virginia through Hancock to Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Hancock, Pennsylvania. It's less than a 2-mile walk. That's at the very narrowest point. It's believed to be the narrowest point of any state in the country. But there is the beautiful Sino Canal goes through there. The beautiful Western Maryland Rail Trail goes through there. There's a fabulous bakery called the Blue Goose Market that has the best pies in this state. It's unbelievable.
Well, I'm stopping there. Here we go. This is why, this is, now we're getting
pie.
good. Now
he had you at pies, didn't he? You love your pies. Nestor, you said, where can you go today with Jen? You can get in your car. You know where I live in Catonsville. You can park at my house and walk down the street to Patapsco State Park and be gone for hours and hours. Is that
why real estate's so nice over there?
You can literally walk down the end of my street and walk into Patapsco State Park.
Yeah.
That's how accessible.
And you don't have any bears in your neighborhood, right?
That's how accessible it is. Right? So again, Nestor's going to hook up with Ron, going to travel. Maryland in miniature is going to be fly fishing with Roderick's, all kinds of good stuff on the crab cake.
You know the thing I want to do, Ron? Have you done and this makes me, I always say, Mulder's going to be like Rhea Fiken. Hold the magazine up again for everybody. American Miniature.
Maryland Miniature.
This is where he plays the Rhea Fiken role. So next up on MPT, Trains of Western Maryland. And then I see this thing from 1992 and it's and we take off the locomotive and you get the meal. I get a crab cake and I get a Chardonnay and we get the glass thing so I looked it up. It's called the Frostburg Flyer. I saw it on MPT. I've seen it a few times. And I always said, if we go out there, I'll do that. So you make fun of me because I don't want to go wrestle bears in the woods or deal with, my wife got 500 black fly bites all over up. And I'm not doing all that, but I'll get on a train and have a proper meal. Like the elite that I am, social elite. But out in Western Maryland, you mentioned trains, you mentioned Hancock. Have you done that train thing? Because that's something I'm going to do. I've decided I'm doing that.
I haven't done the train thing in Cumberland. I've been to Cumberland many times. It's a great launching point to ride your bike up and down the Sino Canal. And there's some great.
Give me a Cumberland thing. Tell me what to do in Cumberland.
Well, Cumberland also has, here you go. It has a statue of Lefty Grove that's new. He's from there. So you
baseball connection. I like that.
Get some baseball connection out there. Can
you come with me on the tour? Do you want to do any of this? Is there anything I'm going to do that you've never done?
I'll get in the back seat. You and your wife can be in the front. I'll get in the back seat and I'll have the magazine.
No, seriously. Like, have you zip lined before? Have you fly fished?
I haven't fly fished. I've done zip line.
Have you had Smith Island cake at Smith Island?
I have had Smith Island cake.
All right, I'm gonna try. Have you been to Blackwater Refuge?
Oh, many times. Yeah.
All right. Trying to think of.
Right.
He wrote this article. He's been to these places. He wrote this article.
I'll go to any of these places all again. Like I was like Smith Island. We did a story about, unfortunately, sea level rise in the Eastern Shore, and you take a boat from Crisfield to Smith Island, which is a wonderful little 45-minute boat ride. There's there's like 4 people on the boat, and you talk to a guy driving the boat. And I also went on a school boat. The Smith Island is so small, the kids there take a boat to go to school and back. And so you're on a boat with like 6 kids and and one of their mothers, because she's a teacher's assistant, and the teacher's on there in the morning. And you got the guy driving the boat, and they've been doing this forever. And then they don't make, unfortunately, Smith Island cake on Smith Island anymore. But when I was there, they still did.
Whoa.
They make it on.
Stop everything. What?
Yeah.
I really don't know this. I'm on a quest. Like, my life's not. Do I have to take it with me? What are we doing?
They make it at Crisfield, so just on the land. That's
here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna buy it at Crisfield, and I'm gonna get on the boat. I'm gonna go over there and eat it.
There you go.
Yeah, listen, you can imagine it's like the best afternoon you can have. I'm sitting there in a bakery and they're making Smith Island cake while I've been walking around, hiking a little bit on Smith Island, taking the boat over there, and I'm just chatting up the women. We're
Oh man,
at work
I'd
making
have
it.
me a Royal Farms
Great.
coffee. I'd say, give me some cake with the coffee, and oh man, that would be great. I'm doing all this. I'm doing it. I'm doing it early. So, Ron, I'm going to do first 10 days on the Eastern Shore. I'm looking at sort of the last 8 to 10 days west, kind of sort of, and I'm going to get Antietam and Frederick on the way back. And then there's sort of the Southern Maryland part of this that I don't even know what to call it. I'm like, what do they call that? Like Central Maryland? Don's like, it's got a name. It's Southern Maryland.
I told him
If
it's
you're gonna run
called
for governor-
Southern Maryland.
If you're going to run for governor, you better know this stuff. And somebody sent me this lodge in St. Leonard's and like all of this cool stuff. I met a person from St. Leonard's and I felt like I met somebody from Wyoming. I once knew someone from Waldorf. I drove down 301 last year going to Nag's Head, and it was beautiful, but I didn't go like over to where Calvert Cliffs and all that is. We were obviously more inland from where the Chesapeake is, but I'm hearing beautiful things about all that. And Brandon Scott went to St. Mary's, right? So we're going to have him on in a couple of weeks, talk to him, but give me a little exploration down there, because I see that as sort of these flat fields you're riding bikes in at Southern Harwood and whatever, everything down there. But our state's so marshy and cool and different on the water, right?
Yeah, it is all about the water in Southern Maryland for sure. Solomon's Island is, fantastic. It's, as a day trip spot. There's a like sculpture garden and art center there that has Smithsonian works in it. That's really great. It's called Lookout Park, right? St. Mary's Cities is nice.
Point Lookout, right? Point
Now the
Lookout.
funny part about St. Mary's City, right, was where Mayor Scott talked to us. He said he had never been to the campus, Ron, and he said he was told he had to find St. Mary's City, and he was looking for a city, right?
Oh, right.
And you quickly realize, oh, it's not really a city. You've got the Ark and the Dove there.
Yeah. So I don't know if necessarily that's where Maryland set the first settlement in Maryland, one of the first settlements in the United States. It's like I think it's the fourth permanent settle in America, right? Of Europeans is in St. Mary's. The Ark and the Dove are the two. They're like
St. Mary's River looks lovely here.
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous, Esther.
The Ark and the Dove are the name of the two ships, like our Maryland's kind of Mayflowers. That's where they landed. There's a lot of great history there. Walking museum tours. The state park is enormous and huge, and you can paddle around and walk.
Great seafood. I mean, that part of Maryland's beautiful.
Like there's all these places have like the Surratt House Museum, where John Wilkes Booth was hidden. All these little places have been turned into little mini museums in all these communities, and so you can get a bite to eat and you can go cool off for a little while, a little air conditioning, and walk around the museum, learn a little history while you're there.
You think it's going to be hot in August in Maryland?
Maryland? Well, at least you get the breeze down there,
It will be a breeze.
Ron Cassie's here for Baltimore Magazine, promoting the magazine. Don's here. We're talking about state of Maryland. Not my crab cake tour, your edition of America in miniature, right? Like I brought it to politics and said, I'm going to find all of that here, but what don't we have here? What are we missing here, and how can we import it?
Well, here's some things people will know we have. We have dolphins. There's hundreds and hundreds of dolphin sightings, and more every year, all down, mostly down in Southern Maryland area, and then across west to Virginia. So if you're down there in Southern Maryland and you get by the water, you may see some dolphins out there in the water. Bring some binoculars, have your camera handy. You go out for a boat ride. People don't think, but we have thousands of dolphins that come up into the bay and come up the Potomac River. They used to be spotted as far up as Washington, D.C. They don't generally come up quite that far anymore. There's Southern Maryland Blue Crabs Independent Baseball League in Southern Maryland. St. Clement's Island is an island a little bit like Hart Miller Island here. It's not a habited island, but you can visit that island, take a tour there. All these things are just like Southern Maryland, especially like if you're going to stay somewhere for one night, man, there's more to do than you'll ever
make
get.
a case for Oxford for me while I'm talking to you about this.
Well, the Oxford bicycle loop, it's a 25-mile loop. There's very simple, few turns. Was rated one of the best bicycle rides in the country by Bicycling Magazine. And it's the one where you put your bike on the ferry and go across at one point. Oxford has these beautiful, gigantic trees, and their downtown is very like Victorian era. There's I think 2 libraries in Oxford. There's yeah, it's got to be one of the most livable little towns in the country. It's really a beautiful place to walk. There's a little beach there where you go in the water. You can take the ferry. Good place to ride a bike.
Sounds like Maine. You're making it sound like Bar
No,
Harbor.
that's what it's like. That's what it's like. Yeah, that's what Oxford is like. It's that's
how is it that it's 5 miles off the freeway that I raced by at 72 miles an hour trying to avoid cops back when I knew Moeller in the early 80s, chasing girls at the beach. My wife and I get it. I've never even noticed the Oxford sign, let alone what it is. So like I've really been ignorant to a lot of these things. This is going to be Don, can we say a summer of awakening is what we should say? Maryland awakening.
No, you're going to have a wonderful experience. And again, I encourage everybody out there who hasn't gotten it, pick up the June edition of Baltimore Magazine.
If
you're not subscribed,
literally, right?
Shame
literally.
on you if you're not subscribing. America in Miniature. Just begin to plan your summer as a family. A lot of these are day trips, just great stuff. See the state. So, Ron, in the midst of all this, back in May, you wrote, and we only have about 10 or 15 minutes left, but you can touch on this. You wrote this article about cleaning up City Hall, and you wrote about sort of what I'm going to call a legacy of corruption in City Hall. It was for a show called Baltimore Positive. It ends on a positive note because you bring it forward to Mayor Brandon Scott, and it's pretty clear. You're pretty hopeful that Mayor Scott has a different approach. You talk about him living in an apartment, driving an old car, and really having a different view of government service. But this thing that you start by telling the story, and I think our listeners will enjoy it, back in 1991 of Jackie McLean. And I had sort of forgotten the pieces. Bring us up to speed on that story because it's like, whoa, what a head scratch.
I think you mentioned her name last time we were together.
Oh, my goodness.
I think you might be the only one in the history, if we Googled all of our conversations, to mention Jackie McLean, right?
Jackie McLean.
Well, there's a couple reasons why the story starts with her. And she had a travel agency, her and her husband, that was in, which had some financial difficulties, which ultimately, I guess, was somewhat of a motivation for her to do some really corrupt things. But she was somebody wealthy, didn't have a background in politics or urban planning or anything like that, but was had a lot of money and ran for a city council office. And it's not that hard if you got a lot of money to buy TV time and things like that. Won a city council seat, then became comptroller. She succeeded Hyman Pressman. Now, ultimately, she did 2 things. She sold a building essentially that she owned to the city, or actually moved all these city offices into the building that she owned, so to drive up the price so she could sell it, right? So you can't, as a city council person, you can't use a building that you own.
What are these people thinking?
Well, there's a little bit of it in the story about the IG, the Inspector General Isabel Mercedes Cumming, who was this is why we started with that story. One reason why her first big case was this Jacqueline McLean case. She's the Inspector General now of Baltimore City, and is doing amazing work the last few years since the creation of that office. But then she was like just out of law school, and that was one of her first cases. And she says that, she's through law school, through her work, she's been to like juvenile court, and you hear heartbreaking stories. This is not what you deal with white collar crime. Nobody is stealing money to pay for their mother's, cancer operation. These are always people who are of means who want more. That's what it comes down to.
It was almost like, you have some great quotes throughout and it gets into this culture thing. Nestor, there's some incredible quotes in this story that Ron wrote in the May edition, cleaning up City Hall. The one that jumped off the page at me, Ron, I had to read it twice. Okay. Alan Spector was an aide to Marvin Mandel, right?
Yeah.
And he says, this gets to Nestor's question. He says, well, this isn't really fair. They're changing the rules in the middle of a game. I'm paraphrasing. You're pretty close to what you wrote. Of course, you help somebody, and then of course they take care of you. Why are we? He didn't even understand why it was wrong, right, Ron?
Right, and I'll say this, his wife is Ricky Spector, who took his seat, and just to bring this together a little bit, Jacqueline McLean, Sheila Dixon was among the city council people who went to her defense. She also created a fictitious employee named Michelle McLeod that she was sending checks to as city controller, whose address happened to be that of her sister's hair salon. But so Mary Pat Clark was the one who blew the whistle on this building deal. Sheila Dixon was running with other city council people to defend Jacqueline McLean. Jacqueline McLean is succeeded in office by Joan Pratt, who was only this November voted out of office and has been under controversy for a lot of things herself, never charged, the crime, but a lot of controversial things there. So nobody goes away. This one hand washing, the other thing that Don knows,
well, Joan Pratt's been there since way before I bought my place, right? So
but Jacqueline McLean, the opening of the story, the woman who goes, gets charged with all these crimes, that's who Joan Pratt replaced. So we haven't had audits and this is what the story ultimately, I think, is, as Don mentioned, is really about, is what can we do systemically, right? Because there's always going to be good and bad people in the world. What can we do systemically to build good structures that inoculate ourselves the best we can against corruption, fraud, waste, mismanagement? And, the hopeful thing is that some of these things are in place, but it's stunning, right? For the first time in 30 years, in decades, city agencies are being audited, right? The city council passed mandatory audits. Joan Pratt never did any of these audits, but Bill Henry's, committed to them. We have an independent.
Which is why we endorsed him last year. We've only endorsed one politician in 2.5 years here. I mean, other than Biden, obviously,
And we never had an inspector general. That office is an independent inspector general. It used to be under the mayor's office. So you can't have an inspector general working for the mayor, actually, right? They need to be separate places, separate funding, separate oversight. So we have that now. We have an independent inspector general who's doing great things. We didn't have a board. We didn't have a viable board of ethics. That's now in the inspector general's office. And the inspector general, I did a follow-up from the print edition for when the story went online. And the inspector general told me there's 3,000 city employees who are required to fill out ethics forms. The first year they sent these forms out, half of them didn't come back, or they came back not filled out correctly. So half the people required to fill out forms are either not filling it out or filling it out incorrectly. And this was just practice forever. Brandon Scott, the mayor, has started an open checkbook process where checks to vendors now go online and city residents can actually see who's getting paid. There's been some good government reforms, referendums passed, the creation of a city administrator, making it easier to override.
So you're saying follow through. I mean, you're the first person we've had on. We've jibber jabbed a lot. We had Jack Young, we had Brandon, we had Mary. We've been through all of that. All the election cycle, it gets moved. Brandon wins. He wins again. So you're the first person to step up and say on this show, and you live here and you pay taxes here and you're a citizen here, that you're feeling like change is real, that the things they ran on last year they're doing.
Yeah, we've the investigation of Marilyn and Nick Mosby, the FBI at City Hall is just put us under a dark cloud again. I think it was very disheartening when that happened for people. But systemically, there are some good things being put in place. And you can see when Marilyn Mosby goes after the inspector general because she asked for an investigation. She doesn't like the results. Or more recently in Baltimore County, there's a new IG there, Kathy Madigan, who, has uncovered some waste, and Kathy Bevins, council member there, doesn't like the work that she's doing, doesn't like the fact that she's there. I think really there are some systemic things being done. And when you see pushback from the politicians, they want the old Alan Spector way of doing things. They don't want oversight, transparency. So there are hopeful systemic things. Ultimately, of course, we know from the last 4 years, our president, it does matter too, who's at the chart, who's in the governor, or all this stuff can be dismantled. This is a good point about the inspector general. When Catherine Pugh was elected, she left that office vacant for 18 months, the office of inspector general. they're supposed to have 10 staff members. They're budgeted for 10. They had 5. She basically just did not fund, did not staff the inspector general. Did Catherine Pugh want people looking into Healthy Holly and everything else? No. And I know city council people who weren't even aware that there was a vacancy at that position for 18 months. And if you remember,
and we know Bill Barr was unavailable, right?
Catherine, Catherine Pugh's story for Baltimore citizens is not really about Healthy Holly. That's part of it, sure. It's really about election fraud. That's her central crime. There's no bigger crime you can commit as an elected official, right, than stealing elections. She gets an illegal loan. She has Gary Brown, her aide, getting checks. She's funneling Healthy Holly money into her campaign to win, which she narrowly beats Sheila Dixon, which is kind of an irony of irony. But
you wonder why I almost ran for mayor?
Oh no, this
seriously.
People have to read this article. It's terrific. And again, I want to say, I think it ends on a hopeful note. Yeah. I mean, I think there's some optimism. But Ron, again, we know We Own This City by Justin Fenton is being made into a HBO series. There was one final hook here, Nestor, before we jump out on the Alan Spector story. And Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong. So Alan Spector says this is unfair. They've changed the rules. And Spector gets indicted on taking bribes. After he's indicted and convicted of taking bribes, he still gets appointed as a district court judge. Right, Ryan?
Yeah.
And then does what?
Takes bribes, I guess.
Again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, Nathaniel Oakes is in the story. He was charged and indicted and found guilty of crimes when he was a state delegate. 3 decades later, this Democratic Central Committee appoints him a state senator's position.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And, this is the thing is, if we all make mistakes, I mean, in life, nobody's entitled to to be an elected official. And, integrity, we need trust in government. That's number one. And it is ultimately the idea of the piece initially, which was worked on long before on our storyboard for a year, long before the story of the Mosbys broke. It was on our storyboard and in the place. And the idea was, with Brandon Scott and Bill Henry and the Inspector General she won a national and international award for the quality of her work, with some good people and some new systems in place and some new watchdog mechanisms in place. There is hope because it's not the stuff with the mayors. It's the last thing I'll say. The stuff with the mayors like Sheila Dixon and Catherine Pugh overshadow a lot. We've had like 24 people in the city and city agencies, including multiple city agency heads, be forced to resign or be charged with crimes that people aren't even aware of. The mayor's Office of Information Technology, 3 people have been essentially removed from office. Is it no wonder then that we get hit with the ransomware that cost the city?
Oh, Ron, it's great reporting, and it's actually the early part of this article pretty depressing because, as you said, it's far beyond the mayoral things. Real quick before you run, as a reporter, what are you paying attention to in the controversy around the Mosbys, City Council President Nick and State's Attorney, his wife Mosby? What are you looking for as a reporter?
Well,
what are you paying attention to?
Well, in the long run, you're just waiting for what happens. We don't know if they will be indicted for anything or not. Guilty until proven innocent. I think beyond that, what's been disheartening in the meantime is the pushback against the media and the deceit and lies. Nick Mosby has said there was a lien against the house, there wasn't a lien against the house, there wasn't, and Marilyn Mosby, through her Twitter account, posted this misleading photograph of when she gave somebody the finger, down at the Sandlot, and then put out a false statement, denying it. And they filed an FCC complaint against Fox News for their coverage. Their lawyers have sent letters to numerous media outlets in the state complaining about the coverage, threatening lawsuits.
We've invited them on; they've declined.
So that pushback.
We've tried.
That pushback against the media, is really disheartening.
I'm such an entrenched member of the media.
And and not.
It goes back to transparency. People that are cheating don't want transparency.
You give somebody the finger, rides by in a bicycle at night, you're at a happy hour, you're down Sandlot. You can say, hey, it was unprofessional, I shouldn't have done that. That's fine. But to post a misleading photograph of the incident and lie about it, then you're like, well, if you're lying that easily about something, what about when you're in a tough case and then you have to turn over discovery to the defendant's lawyers, right? I mean, there's a trust built into the law enforcement. She's a top prosecutor in the state, right? Everything the prosecutor does, they have to turn whatever they find over to the defense team. It's called discovery, right? That it raises serious questions. I mean, there's people's very freedom at stake with their office. And same with the city council person. If you have a lien against your house, most of us at one time or another will be in some financial difficulty. You have a lien, we're working on it, we're paying it off. That's all you need to say. You don't need to deny, back and forth, confirm, deny multiple times. Just be forthright, be honest.
So
Ron
Nestor, what I
Cassie
think
from Baltimore Magazine. Go ahead, Don.
I was just going to say, I think what we captured today is the true variety again in Baltimore Magazine, from Maryland in miniature to corruption in City Hall. Pick up Baltimore Magazine. Great reporters like senior editor Ron Cassie, our good friend, editor-in-chief Mac's wife. Great stuff at Baltimore Magazine. And Ron, it's always a pleasure having you join us. And I know Nestor was taking notes.
Well, here's the thing. I'm somewhere here, I'm going to do something that Cassie hasn't done somewhere in these 30 days. I don't know what it's going to be, but I hope you join us for some part of this, or a ball game this summer, or a beer, or crab cake, something.
I'll throw anything off my schedule to head out on the road with you, Nestor.
There you go.
Feed the ducks at Patterson Park or something like that. I don't know. Appreciate you. Ron Cassie joining us here, former Baltimore County Executive Don Moeller. All of it. Maybe Fadley's with a crab cake would be a great idea. Certainly a great way to start. State Fair. We were there last week at Catonsville doing it up, and we're about to head out on the road. Mayor Brandon Scott will be joining us on June 11th. We also have Dutch Rupert's Burger on June 18th at Pizza John's in Essex. The tour will begin. It's going to be delicious. It's going to be hot. I'm going to learn a lot and probably get wet and cut myself and laugh and probably be caught in a thunderstorm somewhere. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Taos in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.